I have a confession.
Well, good on you, mate.
Yes, I have a confession. I am an atheist. Yes, an atheist.
Good on you.
And watch out, the lightning might strike. Don't get too close to me because it might better keep back. Yes, I'm an atheist. That means I don't believe in God.
And in the speaking of the word clearly indicates you have a concept of God, and therefore how can you say you're an atheist?
Thank you, an atheist. Yes.
Oh, well, that proves it.
So,
That proves
now,
it. Well, you weren't thinking
because
what I said there.
besides not believing in God, that means I also don't believe in heaven, and I don't believe in hell. What about earth? I do believe in earth. But as our friend has pointed out, I could be wrong. Couldn't I? I could be wrong. And there might be a God. I have the answer. There might be heaven. And there might be hell.
I have the answer. You can't hear it.
I'm interested in hearing it. It's my turn to speak.
There you go. Here we have a speaker that doesn't want to know the answer or his suggestion of the question that he asked. If he doesn't want to know the answer, then why the fuck? Yeah, good on you. That's good. I like that. Thank you. Yeah. Now, why the fuck should anybody else be interested in his question? Yeah, that's right. Why should anyone else be
As an
interested in his
atheist,
question?
who might be wrong, I might be wrong. There may be a
Doesn't want to
God.
know the answer, so don't
There
you
may
worry.
There may be a heaven, and there may be a hell.
If he doesn't even want to answer to his question, why the
Just
fuck should you
because
be what
I'm
he's
an
saying?
atheist, and I don't
You're
believe
running
in
away
God,
from the question,
heaven
mate.
or hell,
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Are we agreed on that, sir? Can
got
we
me
agree
going.
on that?
You got me
That I
going.
could be wrong.
Great speech,
I could be wrong,
Yeah.
and I may go to hell. Wouldn't I be surprised as an atheist if I find myself dead and in hell? I'd be gobsmacked. Wait, what a surprise that would be if I found myself in hell. But when I get to hell, when I get there as an atheist, I have a question for Satan. Yes, I want to ask the devil a question. In fact, a few questions. Now, do you want to know what those questions are? Well, the first question is, I'd say, sir or sire, that's if you listen to me. The devil might not even listen to me at all. But the first question would be is, why are you punishing the sinners? Why are you, the devil, Satan, punishing the sinners? Surely, I'd say, you ought to be rewarding us sinners.
Why is
The
that?
devil ought to be giving us rewards because we are breaking God's rules.
Not in hell, you're not.
I would then ask him, whose side is he on? If God is getting Satan to punish us as sinners for breaking God's rules, whose side is Satan on? Obviously, Satan is on God's side, and you and me have all been conned stupid. You've only got to think about it and use your logic and rationality for once in your life, for one moment, and you'll see what a load of crap that we have been brainwashed with. It's total rubbish. Satan, when you think about it logically, is on God's side. Now, yes, sir, you had a question.
I just said you are.
You are what?
I don't know, I can't remember.
Actually, in the Old Testament, there is no hell, and Satan isn't.
Repeat the question.
Satan's an angel.
Yeah, repeat
Satan's an archangel, and it's only God's
the answer.
not a
Repeat the question.
Some chap here is pointing out that in the old Satan, Satan in the Old Testament is merely some form of archangel who is, yes, it's in Job, the book of Job. Go and read it for once in your life. Here, as an atheist, I'm telling you, go and read the Bible and see what it really says. Don't listen to those who are trying to brainwash you. Don't listen to the authority figures within within your denomination, read it for yourself and see. And you'll find that in the book of Job, Satan is God's henchman. Yes, henchman, who actually likes putting the boot into God. And he says to God, Job's only faithful because you've given him wives, or a wife, children, cattle, land, etc., servants. And Satan said to God, according to the story, go and read it for yourself, if you take those away from Job, he will curse your name. He will cease to be faithful. So God says, right, Satan, go to it. And God sent Satan to take away from Job his wife, his children, his servants, his cattle, his land. And thus that silly bugger Job curse his name? No, he doesn't. He doesn't.
It's amazing what misery.
So in the story,
it's amazing what misery God would inflict to prove a point. It's to an adversary.
so the Satan that we've got is the Christian Satan. Nothing to do with the Satan in the Old Testament. Although, admittedly, that mention of Satan in Job as one of God's archangels, as part of God's court in heaven, is the first mention that's in the Bible. You all think the serpent is the devil.
Yeah.
That's what you're indoctrinated with. But if you actually read the story for yourself, here you are once again, go and read the Adam and Eve story and see for yourself what it says. It won't say what you've been brainwashed into by your authority figures within your denomination. Read it for yourself.
So what is your big objection that God ultimately controls Satan, so Satan is God's agent? So you reckon everything that's bad comes back to God? Is that your objection?
Well, in this particular story of Adam and Eve and the apple, the serpent is opposed to God because God doesn't want you to have the knowledge of good and evil. You're not to eat the apple. You're not to have the knowledge of good and evil. You are not, as humans, meant to have a moral dimension. Read the story for yourself. So, God has created humans as human animals, and He doesn't want us to have a moral dimension. We are forbidden to gain the knowledge of good and evil. And when the humans do gain the knowledge of good and evil, you'll see a few paragraphs further on, God gets very angry with them for gaining that knowledge, and He says, they have become like gods. The humans have become like gods, knowing good and evil. And He didn't want us to have that knowledge of good and evil. He didn't want us to have a moral dimension. He didn't want us to be moral. And because we became moral, and therefore we became like gods, He booted us out of the Garden of Eden and shoved up a flaming sword at the gate so we couldn't get back in again and eat from the tree of life. We would have had eternal life, according to the story. I don't believe it, but it's there in the Bible. Read it for yourself. So what God has done, because we became like gods, knowing good and evil, because of the serpent, He has made sure that every one of the billions of humans that's ever existed since then dies. So we've all been under a death sentence. And if you care to go into that library and look it up for yourself, it's closed. Look up the ancient Christians. You're trying to shut me up too, yeah. Look up the ancient Christian beliefs that were there in the early church, in the first 3 centuries of Christianity. You will find that some of the Christians, the Gnostic Christians, you spell that with a G. The Gnostic Christians believed, some of them, that the serpent was the first appearance of Jesus Christ on earth. Why? Because He gave us the knowledge the knowledge of good and evil. However, they're not around now because we murdered them. We joined up with Constantine, the Roman Emperor, and we murdered every other variety of Christianity except the one variety that the emperors chose to back, to buy out, and eventually support with Roman arms to get rid of all the other versions. Don't believe me. I'm an atheist. I could be the son of Satan. Don't believe me. Go and look it up for yourself. Go and look it up for yourself. Have you got the guts to go in there through those doors and do that?
Already have, but it's closed.
Who?
Do you think maybe your idea of what knowing what is accurate?
Yeah.
Because the same few passages in Genesis says that Adam knew Eve, and it's not a reference to actually knowing the existence of Eve, it's knowing her personally. So you think the knowing of the good and evil is simply knowing the existence of good and evil, or it might actually mean something completely different?
Good point, yes. What do you think? Okay.
I think knowing is the intimate depth of knowing the good and evil, knowing the good and just.
Participating in it?
But sorry?
You mean participating in the evil by
Desiring
having sex?
Desiring the evil, yes.
The trouble is, if the word knowledge has got even deeper connotations, that makes what God did far worse, in my view.
Yeah,
Not in God's view. He didn't want us to have the knowledge of good and evil, however deep that knowledge might be.
You're an atheist.